It's the 108-page document from the Privileges Committee. You can go, first of all, just to that very damning conclusion where they say that Boris Johnson should be suspended for 90 days, which is an extraordinary punishment proposed by a Conservative-led committee. Now, we've been going through some of the bits further into this document just to ascertain what the arguments are. What is it that means that those MPs have decided to judge Boris Johnson so harshly? And we're going to have a little look at what they concluded on gatherings. So here we are. It's quite a long way into the report. And essentially, they say that one of the arguments Boris Johnson deployed time and again was that it was absolutely essential or reasonably necessary for work purposes to have all of those thank yous, those leaving drinks, the birthday celebrations, the motivational events. If you remember in the committee hearing, Boris Johnson made absolutely clear, and the committee note this, that is an important part of being a boss at an organisation, and therefore that's what he was doing. But here's what the committee basically decided. They decided that while 5 of the 6 events do focus on thanking staff for working hard or raising morale, but they don't believe that is a permitted activity under the rules. We do not believe that, if asked at this time whether unsocially distanced leaving dues to maintain staff morale were permitted under the rules and guidance, he would have been advised he would not have advised the British public that they were. And so essentially what they're doing is mounting an argument there of hypocrisy, which is one of the charges, coupled with the fact that he did it too, and his team did it too, that the committee have seized upon. They also talk about how there was no obvious social distancing at any of the events for which the committee have photographs. Now, actually, we've already seen quite a lot of the photographs, and they're later on in this report. But the committee has decided to judge him quite harshly on the fact that they can't see people maintaining social distances. We have no evidence of substantive mitigations in place in the rooms or areas where the gathering took place. You remember one of the arguments that Downing Street tried to mount was that effectively, because Downing Street was such a safe location, in some points rather early on in COVID, there was testing, there were other, it's one of the few workplaces in the country where there was quite a lot of activity. They put in place things to protect all the staff. They say that is not in evidence in any of the photographs that they look at. He says, Mr Johnson concedes the social distancing was not possible at these events, but maintains the guidance was complied with completely. And here it is. They're very stark about it. They say, this is not correct. Mr Johnson refers to social distancing of less than 2 metres as imperfect. This term is not in the guidance. So what they have done, this committee, is essentially to fillet the argument made by Boris Johnson in that committee and just highlight where they don't think it's true, that how he has reinterpreted, this is what they say later on in the report, he has reinterpreted the guidance in his favour, but they don't think he's done so fairly. We think it is highly unlikely on the balance of probabilities that Mr Johnson, in light of his cumulative direct personal experience of this event and his familiarity with the rules and guidance as their most prominent public promoter, could have genuinely believed at the time of his statements to the House that the rules were being complied with. We think it is just as unlikely he could have continued to believe at this time. We think it's just as unlikely he could have continued to believe this at the time of his evidence to our committee. We conclude that when he told the House and this committee that the rules and guidance were being complied with, his own knowledge was such that he deliberately misled the House and this committee. That's at the core of the argument. It's what the committee thought before the hearing, I have to say. But here it is. He knew he was there. He knew the rules. He misinterpreted them deliberately. And they believe he lied to the House.